All right, Thursday afternoon, Joey and Jason live training. Joey, how you feeling this week, buddy?
Oh, great, man. Great. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a good day. I've been exercising my ability to have work-life balance today. Researching, and I'm including this because of today's topic, but researching how to make a crib. Did a little bit of work in the morning. Got some calls this afternoon. I know that you live a similar way, so let's introduce the topic. Today's topic is how to create balance as an entrepreneur. And honestly, I know we say this every week, but this is a good one for you and I because I think we both are very aligned when it comes to how we view our work and our life relationships. So maybe kick us off with some thoughts on work-life balance.
Yeah, man. So my overarching thought behind it is that if I'm able to maintain a good work-life balance, I will be even more successful with both of them than if I tried to go all in on one or the other. And so a lot of times, guys, you'll hear gurus talk about um, like now's the time to work, right? And if you're in your 20s and 30s and you want to be a successful entrepreneur, now is the time to sacrifice everything in order to retire at 40 or something like that. I see it all the time, and I couldn't disagree more with that philosophy because that will work for the maybe the 1% of people, and that's what their experience is. But they preach it as if it's going to work for everybody. And I just don't want people to, I really don't want people, and I'm passionate about this because I don't want people to follow that advice and sacrifice everything and miss out on life, right? And so for
Yeah.
me, the balance is ultimately important because they balance each other. If I were to work too much, I would get stressed out. I would get burnt out, and I would ultimately be just spinning my wheels and arguably not be able to accomplish the same things with my professional life and with work had I been rested and energized and maybe took a step back and looked at it from a different perspective. The life, the non-work is what allows me to go 110% when I am working.
Yeah.
You can't go 110% all the time, or that just becomes your new normal, and you normalize it, and then it's not really above and beyond, it's just your average. And so to me, the life part of work life is what allows me to be so successful when I'm working because I'm all in on it, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. And I think I think I agree with you almost 100% of the way. I don't know if I think about it exactly the same way, so I'll take a stab at it. Um, I think our industry and self-help books and the Gary V's of the world, who I have a lot of respect for, and the Jocko Willinks of the world, and all those guys, I think there has been an effort made to kind of make work-life balance like a bad phrase, right? And so some people will say work-life integration and whatever it is that you identify with, but truthfully, I think the real thing to look at is not whether or not to seek work-life balance, because you're going to find balance or you will be imbalanced and go off the rails. But it's what are you balancing? And for me, it's not that I'm balancing the hours in my day as much as it's balancing my energy, my attention, my passion, my focus. And if I try to be energetic, passionate, focused, and hyper productive, 12 hours a day, I've just found that that's not the most creative that I can be. That's not the happiest that I can be. I can't be as evangelical to the people I want to influence. I won't build fun, exciting things. You and I wouldn't enjoy collaborating as much as we do. We only talk, a few times a week, 3 to 5 times a week. We probably have real conversations. And because of that, there's still magic or like power in that. And so to me, I think the key is what you're balancing, because I don't always like, I know that you don't always film new innovations or trainings or whatever, but when you do, you knock them out with like passion and gusto, if that's even a way to say it, and like they come out much more charismatic and effective, right? Does that make sense?
100%. Like to me, it's almost like what's a good metaphor? Like an artist creating an album, right?
Yeah.
And so most of the time, guys, like your favorite artists, they're not in the studio, right? It doesn't take that long because they're gaining perspective. They're living their life. They're doing things.
Yeah.
And then when the time is right, they get in the studio and they create a masterpiece, right? And I kind of look at work, particularly being an entrepreneur in the gym, is sort of like that, where these short spurts of execution, they can last so long before you have to dig deep again, right? And like, as an example, going through the Perfect Gym model would be a great example of that. Like, when you sign up for our program, I would go 110% for 30, 60, 90, whatever, however long. I wouldn't just haw through the program. I would try to absorb it and execute it really hard, knowing that if you do a very, very good job at doing that, it's going to last you arguably years. Do you know what I mean? Before you have to rethink about or rebuild these things. And so for me, it's well worth those periods of lots of work for all of the periods that follow with much less work, and you're able to then focus on the other things in your life, and you don't have to wait till you're 40 years old to enjoy those things. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, Jason, we've both read, 4-Hour Workweek. And so it's similar. My mindset is similar, not to the extreme that like Tim Ferriss goes, where he's literally leaving the country and all that stuff. But the way that I think about it is similar to the way that he thinks about it, where it's like, look, you should be able to take, your business should allow you to be able to take mini vacations at any point in time in your life, right? If you want to leave for 2 to 3 weeks and you can't, right, there's room for improvement within your business. And I really believe that. And so that a lot of that is what's in the Perfect Gym model, and the systemization and the team building and all of that, is to be able to create that work-life balance the way that I know how to create it, which is through systems and things like that. But yeah, I mean, what do you think is the key for you? Because obviously you've worked yourself out of the gym as well. So how did you do that? And how were you able, because you have great work-life balance now, but how were you able to do that?
Yeah, I think so. A couple of clarifications I want to make, particularly, Joey and I are both in the Army, and I spent 4 years, and Joey, were you in 4 years?
6.
Oh, okay, awesome. We both spent years, a good chunk of that time, like hustling and working hard. And when we built our businesses, we were hustling and working hard. So there is definitely time where, especially, it doesn't even necessarily matter about your age. I think you could make that delineation, but really just the earlier a project is, while you're setting it up, this is you spending effort, passion, and energy to earn that future reward, right? And so both of us, in one way or another, have been very disciplined by, really pushing the stone up the hill every single day for certain periods of time. But that isn't necessarily what's going to provide you with prosperity when the time is right. The second point I wanted to make is the difference, I think, because I don't know if I can think of a book that more directly captures like how I feel about being an entrepreneur than 4-Hour Workweek. But I think the difference is Tim Ferriss is talking about businesses that he's not passionate about for the most part. It's a supplement company, it's a software service company, and that's great. He's done really, really well at it. But I think part of it is Joey and I, and most of you watching this, I actually love being in the gym. I love working with other entrepreneurs in the role that I'm in now. And so I actually have got work-life balance, or being able to it's the ability to choose the battleground and the battles you want to fight. And I choose when I go to the gym, and I choose to work hard. And I think Tim Ferriss does the same thing. He's answered this many times publicly. He doesn't work only 4 hours a week and sit by the pool or travel to Nicaragua for the rest of the week every single week. He works a lot more than that because he's passionate about what he's doing. But he could move those things forward, and we can move these things forward in very small doses of our time. And so how did I get here? This is my favorite thing to discuss with clients. It's by having a very clear understanding of not only where I want to go, I mean, very detailed. When do I wake up? What do I spend my days doing? How much money do I make? How often am I off? Can I just call off right away, or do I need to find a replacement? All of that. So number one is I only make decisions that lead me towards that. And number two was just realizing, and this is very personal to me, but just realizing that I hate doing things that I'm not super excited to do. And so what I try to do is I try to set up my life where I do as many of the things that I'm doing are things that I'm excited to do. If you've ever been on a call with me, I start it like this. Hey, and there's a fucking reason, because I'm really excited to see you. I'm really excited to be there. When I walk in my gym, it's a fucking carnival. And it's because like I want to be there. And I did a few years ago have moments and times where I'd be doing a thing in my business and realize that it's the last thing that I wanted to be doing. And some of those things were things that I previously had loved. And so if this hits close to home for you, Joey and I are living proof that you can take deliberate steps to where you can fall back in love with those things, and get back where you're going. Joey, I think I lost you for a second, buddy.
Oh, sorry.
So maybe what I would say is and we've talked almost some of these conversations, they kind of remind me of other conversations we've had on these lives, but like, what are the steps that you took to get to the point where you're able to have freedom?
Yeah, man, it's very similar. For me, it was, and I'll double down on what you're saying. Even when you think about like the 4-hour work week and something like that, I would say that I probably spend 4 hours or less doing things that I do not want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I would consider being my work.
Yeah.
Now, anytime I'm doing something for FitBiz or for Body by Design, but it's what I elect to do because I want to, I have a hard time understanding how that's work. When I have the choice to do whatever I want to do and I want to do this thing because I'm passionate about it, I don't see it. Right. So I don't consider those work hours. But how did I get to be able to have that lifestyle? It's exactly what we teach in the Perfect Gym model, right? I followed the steps to a T, and much like you, the things that I decided to delegate are the things that I did not want to do, period. Right. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I never wanted to do them. Like, dude, but you have to realize like your life and your priorities and things is very, very fluid and it changes all the time. Right. Jason, you're expecting a kid on the way, right? Like things will change, and some of the things that you enjoy doing now, you may not enjoy doing once you have your kid, because you have a new top priority, right? So things have to get pushed down. Well, that happens all the time, right? And so I enjoyed training, and when I first got started, I liked to do it. Now I don't, right? I like training myself, but not other people. Or there was a period of times where I loved sales. Like I could not wait to get in, and like, I had 8 appointments, even if I only saw 4 of them, like I still, like I was pumped to like meet them and sell them and close them. And I at some point, I no longer enjoy doing it. Was I still good at it? Of course, I spent a ton of time doing it, but I didn't enjoy doing it. It didn't give me energy. So at that point, I found a way to delegate that to somebody that does enjoy doing that, because what I've found is by doing that, they will be much more successful than I will be dragging my ass in there without energy. So it works in 2 ways. Number one, like it allows me to stay extreme. Like everyone asks, like a lot of the times, how are you so motivated and do all this stuff? Well, because I'm only doing the stuff I want to do. Well, it's easy. That's easy then. It's really, really hard to be motivated all the time when you're working a job that you hate, right? And so if you want to stay motivated, you want to stay in momentum, then only do the things that give you energy. And that means you have to find, in most cases, people that will replace you, right? And I've tried, and Jason has tried to show you exactly how to do that, because it's easier said than done. But those people out there exist. There's going to be a 25-year-old hard-hitting kid that can't wait to close some sales. Go out and find that person and just make that agreement with yourself that you will use your time to then propel everything faster and harder if you no longer have to do the thing that you're not enjoying doing, right? And so you just have to make that bet. And that's usually a bet that's hard to do the first time. But once you start doing it and you see that it works, that's when you can get a momentum and continue to do it. Like your first time you delegate something at your gym, right? You're like, oh, I don't know if this guy's going to coach as good as me, and then you finally hire him and you give him half of your classes and you realize the gym is doing great still, right? And you're like, I wonder if I didn't have to do all the contracts and all the emails and everything. Maybe somebody that likes admin would want to do that, and then you hire them and they do it and you're like, oh my gosh, like the gym's not on fire. It's still working. And you just continually do that. Is that kind of like how you went through it with slowly phasing yourself out? Because I can't imagine you just walked away,
No, and I think that actually hits on an important point. So for starters, I I don't always say this, and I never say it to be cocky, but if I'm talking to an entrepreneur, I'll say I think I retired in like 2018, because my definition of retired is when I'm doing things that I don't want to do more than I'm doing things that I do want to do. And I really just haven't. My business, when I was 100% focused on my gym only, was very much systemized and automated to where I was only doing the things where I could really get energy from it. And so, in my opinion, I really kind of retired and honestly partnered with you as an opportunity to have more fun, like for real. And so I think I retired in 2018. Hopefully, even with the family coming, that'll be able to maintain that way. And so what I would say is the way I think about starting to delegate and kind of phasing through that, what you just described, it's almost like you start off as an employee of your business by necessity. So you're an owner, but separate that from your actions day to day. That's the employee part. You're the employee. What you need to do is the owner hat needs to improve the business to where you can afford to replace yourselves systematically as an employee so that you're become less and less and less of an employee, right? And I think that when I say earn, it's not money and it's not necessarily even a framework. It's literally earning the right by identifying the right people, by compensating them in an effective way, and by training them in order to take over that role, right? And so the thing that you kind of made me think of right at the end of your sentence or your comment there was a lot of people on this call have been told to get off the floor. A lot of the people on this call have been told to replace themselves in sales or feel that way. And I think it's not actually that way. I think your business tells you, and then your interest and passion tells you when it's time to delegate and what things to delegate. And I think that our perfect gym model absolutely addresses those things. And in the calls, I'm always touting that, where it's like, don't just not coach because Joey and Jason said so, or some other guru type said so. Like, don't get yourself off the floor because you're super passionate about growing the business and you need time to do those other things. And then the order in which you delegate, again, should be dictated by your own interests. And I think that's where you and I are a great example. The things that you do day to day as a fully delegated human being, pretty much, and the things I do day to day as a pretty much fully delegated human being in these businesses are a little different. You know what I mean? And that's based on our own interests. Does that all make sense?
I don't think you ever have to get off the floor if that's what you enjoy doing, right? I mean, you have to realize that like you can't have everything. So, if you want to have, typically, if you want to have a very high income, right, a net income, you probably won't achieve it by spending the majority of your hours training. But I don't think that I don't think that you can not have a successful business that you absolutely love and still train 20 hours a week. Of course you could. Of course you could, right? Because we're at that point, like now where I have the bandwidth to spend 20 hours per week training clients at my gym if I wanted to, right? Would I? No, because it's not what gives me energy and passion. But like, does that mean I would have to step back into sales and all those other things? No, I'd probably be it'd be weird because I have managers that are managing, the trainers and I'd be one of them. But the point is, like, you don't ever have to. Like, I know some guys in our program that really, really love coaching, and there's absolutely no reason why you have to give that up in order to have the business of your dreams. But a lot of the times you'll hear me say that because it's faster. It's faster if your goal is to make a good amount of money, have financial freedom and all of that stuff. It's faster to not spend the majority of your hours on the floor, but by no means do you have to not do that, right? It's all about finding your balance, like you said.
Yeah, and what I would say is, as we grow, there's really two factors at play. There's scaling. How many people are we working with, or how many hours, or how many of something are we doing? And then there's pricing. How much are we charging for that thing? And so absolutely. What's the girl's name from The Biggest Loser?
Jillian Michaels.
Jillian Michaels. She coaches people every day. She trades her time to stand in front of somebody on a treadmill and scream horrible things at them. And she makes millions of dollars doing that. I have a friend, Christmas Abbott, does the same type of thing. If you want to be a master practitioner, then you can charge more money and scale in a very different direction. We have people that are probably watching this call right now who have large remote training programs, who have people that pay for their own one-on-ones with the coach, and they pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month for that. And so if that's the direction you want to go, and that's the dream that you come up with when you do that exercise I referred to earlier, well, then by all means, maximize the return on your hourly efforts as a impactful, practitioning coach, right? The alternative is, if your focus is on growing and impacting more and more people, well, you may need to have systems in place to multiply your efforts. And so that's where you see, like, Tony Robbins has structured, networks of people who he's influenced, who have gone out and influenced other people who then have their own clients. And so, one of the things, Joey and I have talked about before is, I want to help change people's lives. It's one of my things that I like to do, and I have my reasons for that. But I can't do it. I didn't want to do it with 100 people, so I grew my gym to over 500 at one point, and 300 and some change now. And then that wasn't enough for me. And so how can I impact more? Well, I work with other coaches who their passion then leaks out, and so now together we're probably impacting, conservatively 10 to 20,000 human beings just by virtue of working with, the owners of those gyms, right? What are some things you wouldn't, what are some steps you would not take in an effort to free yourself up? Like, what are some common things we see people do where they struggle after trying to do that?
I wouldn't hire somebody just to save yourself time without knowing the vision, right? And so, like, for me, because one thing that you were just talking about was, like, really people will go about this differently depending on what their end goal is. Hey man, I wouldn't even look at scaling until you know what that looks like for you. Like, what's the end objective? Like what kind of business ultimately, if time and if money wasn't a factor, right, and you had unlimited resources, how would your business run on a day-to-day basis, right? How would you, what role would you like to play in it, right? And once you can identify that, because at some point money won't be an issue, right? You'll be making enough profit every month to where you can make all of those hires. But let's take a step back before you have the money and say, well, if I already had unlimited resources, what exactly would my business look like and what role would I play in it? Then start creating your plan to get there. Don't just hire somebody because you're working 60 hours a week now and you want to work 40. Like, you have to make sure that fits in the grand scheme of your plan. Otherwise, you're going to end up, I think, wasting more time and taking a step backwards, which is why when I started doing this, as you guys probably are not surprised, I started making training courses for the employees that I was bringing on, because I did not want to do it again. I knew that once I stepped away from this, I was never coming back to that role. And so I wanted to make it as perfect as I possibly could. So there was no room for interpretation, no room for error, no room for expectations that weren't being met, no room for any of that. So of course, SOPs, 4Rs, training videos, training courses, quizzes, all of that stuff. And yeah, it took me some time to do, but guess what, guys? I did only have to do it once. I've never had to do it again. And so to me, it was that short spurt of a lot of effort that then, paid off tenfold now.
Yeah, just to clarify what Joey's just saying, you guys, literally, I'm the first person to join FitBiz University, and I got a training portal with SOPs and like everything done for us. And so he's not kidding. That's like the truest blue entrepreneurial instinct that I can think of, is if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it really, really well. I'm going to do it one time and never have to do it again. And I think honestly, of anybody I've ever met, I think you might be the best example of that. A couple of points I wanted to hit. Number one, a lot of people, I think that I'm working 60 hours now. If I was only working 80 hours, then this thing would be really great. And the reality is, it's just not that way. You're not going to get where you want to be by continuing to do the same thing harder. Okay. And so, to kind of explain that to a finer point, let's just think about what a business at its foundation is. you offer a product or service, in our case, a service, a gym, a service. You offer it for a price, and customers come in, they see this service, and they think, oh, that's worth more than the price, and they give you a little bit of money for that. And then if you continue to, fulfill on that very simple contract, that same person will continue to make that exchange over and over again. And also every other person, it'll accrue. I know this seems really fundamental and silly, but it's true. And so if your business is not growing, you are fundamentally not fulfilling on that promise, on that contract. Either the service is not worth the amount of money you're asking, you're not getting in front of enough people to get them engaged in that contract, or any number of a couple of small little tweaks. But if you can do that, then you can scale. And as you scale, you'll be able to impact more people. And it really is that simple. And so whatever you're doing now has resulted in your ability to have the number of clients you have now. It is unlikely that doing what you do now harder will give you a much better result without directly correlating to increased hours of your time. So if I'm able to coach one person per hour and I want to work 20 hours a week, I can coach 20 times. If I want to work 80 hours a week, I can coach 80 times. Do I make more money? Yes. Does my wife hate me? Absolutely. Right. And so in order to get out of that vicious cycle, you must fundamentally alter what it is that you are doing to fulfill on that fundamental agreement. Does that all make sense? I know that's like kind of like really, really like fundamental, but to me, I just think that's how we get there, is you have to change what you're doing.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of people became entrepreneurs in the first place, is to not trade all of your time for dollars. If that's all you like, it's so much easier to just go work for someone else. Yeah. If you just want to trade your time for dollars, than it is being an entrepreneur, because you wouldn't have to absorb all the risk. You wouldn't have to take your work home with you every night. You wouldn't have to do all of these things as an entrepreneur just to trade your time for dollars. Right. So to me, the whole point of being an entrepreneur and starting a business is to leverage your time, make that 5 hours count for, 50 hours. If you can figure out a way to do that, right. The way I look at it, to make money, there's maybe 3 or 4 different ways. And it starts off with trading your time for money, right? That's just how it usually starts, especially when you're talking about an entrepreneur. Yeah. And then as you level up and you scale and you delegate, now you're trading other people's time for money, right? And then, but you have to lead those people and whatever. And then ultimately, when you sell and invest and buy assets and things like that, you're just trading money for money, right? You just trade some money for more money, right? If you know how to do that. And so don't be stuck at the trading your time for money and saying like, well, if I'm making this amount, then yeah, I can work more. Because to me, you're absorbing all the liability of being an entrepreneur without any of the upside of finally getting to that trading other people's time for money. And so that's what we talk about in leadership and team building and all that stuff, is because like, if I spend 1 hour per week leading my team really, really good and creating a game plan, creating an action plan, telling them what needs to be done, when it needs to be done. I don't tell them how to do it. I like them to figure out how to do things. But the game plan, they are going to go and roll that out to the rest of our team, who then roll it out to all of our customers, who then all pay us money. So do you see how I just leveraged my hour of time across an entire company and then across all of our customer base with a new program, and then received money from hundreds of people from my 1 hour of time? That's leveraging, guys. And so when you get to that level, which we teach you how to do that, that's all you should be spending your time doing, is making decisions, just making decisions, right? And not doing repeated tasks, but simply making decisions and then following up with your team to make sure that things got executed exactly as you game planned it. And if they didn't, what adjustments can you guys make? Like, no one's perfect, right? Yeah. And so that's how I spend all of my time now with Body by Design. I haven't been able to accomplish that yet with FitBiz, but it's a much newer company and these things go in stages, right? And so I don't even know what the question was, but I started talking about that stuff.
I can piggyback back off of that. I think you just, to me, I kind of had an epiphany while you were listening, and maybe this won't mean anything to anybody, but You said you don't want to trade your time for money. And you've also said multiple times one of my favorite phrases, and that is do the things that give you energy. And what I think is the goal is to trade your time for energy. And that's what I do, right? And so if yes, I trade my time. I actually sit on hour-long calls with people. I don't delegate that yet. I'm sure at some point I will do that to some extent, but I actually get energy from those calls. Joey, you get energy from innovating. And so one of the things that we do is we've elevated from trading our time for money. I really got to get these documents written, and I really got to make sure the billing is right, and I really got to do this. And there are support staff that have taken on those roles, even within fitness, especially within the gyms. And so now we are able to trade our time for energy, which means the more that I work, the more inspired I am, the more motivated I am, the more focused and passionate I can be. And I really do believe that. And I never thought of that till just now. So thank you for that. And then the second thing I was going to say is the only reason that you work is, or the only reason for money is to enjoy your life. So never don't enjoy your life in order to make money. Does that make sense? I've said that better before,
Yes.
but like,
Yes.
but the idea is like, if the whole point is to enjoy your life, why would you trade your life for more money? It doesn't make any sense to me. It never has. And I've never been somebody who can think about Jason in his late 70s who's going to be able to just chill out and retire. You know what really successful people do when they retire? They diligently work on woodworking or their golf game or fishing, or they knit, or they do things. We don't stop doing things. Retirement is not sitting in a room, hopefully, with a blanket over your lap watching TV. It's the ability to go out and trade your time for energy, to go out and hunt because you love hunting, to go out with your kids or your grandkids because you get energy from that. Why the fuck do I want to wait until I'm 70 years old to do that? I can't see any reason why.
No, man. I think the biggest point of this call was to just say it's okay. You know what I mean? And to not think that when you're at the park playing with your kids instead of working, that you're not going to be successful because you're not putting in the effort. Like, fuck that. You know, I just do not believe in that. And I think that is what, to me, the scariest thing is losing time that I can never get back, because it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can't buy time. Do you know what I mean? And so like what if you miss a year or 2 years? And this happened to me, which is why I'm so passionate about it now. Is like, I literally missed an entire year that I couldn't get back no matter how much money I make. Right. And it was a huge mistake. And if anybody can just learn from that, and if one person says, you know what, I'm going to go do this instead of working on some fucking arbitrary task that doesn't matter, right, in the grand scheme of life, you know, and you capture this moment with your kids or whoever that's going to live on. Like, to me, that is what everything is about. And there's absolutely a way for you to leverage your business to be able to do that more and more and more, right? And we're hoping to teach you what we've done, so we have more and more and more of those moments, right? That you've found a way that most people can't find. You know, most people cannot find a way to get that, right? They have to work for other people. And they bitch about when they get called into work on the weekends or overtime or whatever. But you guys, if you're already listening to this, you've already not accepted that, right? So let's just get all the way to the finish line. Don't get stuck halfway through where you're still doing things that you don't want to do. You've already made the hardest decision to start something on your own and to invest and to trust other people and processes. Go all the way to the end, right? And fully get to whatever you wrote down that is your, and I would do that exercise if you guys haven't done that, is write down exactly what your business looks like when it's at the end zone. Like, and then together, through the course, through Jason's coaching, through our masterminds, like, we can help get you there, but we got to know where we're going and make sure that you don't feel bad on the journey there, right? By not working.
That was really well said. I think one little point I would add too is, you know, I'm on these calls. I get the wins from people. I see your struggles. I see your wins. And I will tell you this, the two most excited wins, I'm going to give the first one away, is when somebody gets a real big sale for the first time that's been struggling. That gives you really great energy. Oh my God, I invested in FitBiz. I tried this model, and today I signed up a $6,000 paid in full or something crazy, right? That is the most excited somebody is. But over the course of a coaching relationship that I have with a client, really the big things that really people get very, very excited about are, oh my God, I took a week off and I came back and we had more clients. Oh my goodness, I didn't have to coach last week. And because of that, I was able to see my kids off to school every morning. Or those are the things that really impact your lives. And if you're not appreciating that, give it some time to think about it. Joey's right. And we talk about these on the calls all the time, but really sit down and write down, talk to your spouse, talk to your partner. What is it that I want to do every day? And what is it that we're doing this for? And it's really hard to even have space to do that if you're just trying to work 100 hours a week doing the same thing you did before we ever met you. You know what I mean? And so you kind of, at some point, you got to come down off your hill if you ever want a chance to climb a fucking mountain. Does that make sense? Like, you're here, I get it. And this is the thing that pays the mortgage every month, and that's good. But doing more of that, there's nowhere else to go. You got to come down to make a big change.
I think that work hours are like a bell curve almost. Do you know what I mean? Where like in everybody's ideal amount, like where they're at the top of the bell curve, the most production they can get. It might be for some people 10 hours a week, 20, 30, 40, whatever. And then freaks like Elon Musk. Like I really do think that he is still productive at 80 hours a week or whatever
he's
works.
Getting energy from that. I think that qualifies. I think he wants to go to Mars and he wants to be the innovator, and he can't help it. I think he gets, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but he gets energy from that, you know?
I think there are those outliers. And I think he's smart enough to not tell everybody do exactly like me. I think he went on Joe Rogan. He's like, you would hate to be me. Like, you know what I mean? But like, the point is like, I would think that for most people, the highest production you're going to get out of this bell curve, right, at the very top is probably less hours than you think it is. Because once you start getting into 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, I think you're getting to like diminishing returns. And by the end of the week, like you're just doing mindless shit that doesn't even matter because you're just overworked, you're overexhausted, you're overtired, and you're just like slapping your keyboard saying, I gotta work to be successful, right? And it's just a mantra in your head, but you're way past the peak and the top of your game, you know? And for me, I do it on a more of a micro level where I do break it down per day, but that's just how my mind works. And so I have periods per day where I have a very intense, focused time of work. And then outside of that, I don't, right? But that's just how I do it. And I'm not even telling you guys it's the best way to do it. It's how my mind works. And it took me a while to figure that out, right? It took me a lot of time. But now by doing that, I've been way more productive than I've ever been in the past with getting shit done and getting it done good. But find your balance and find what works, and don't feel bad during all the other hours that you're not working, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that is a place where we differ, but in not a disagreement, just the way you are versus the way I am. My thing is and I know you're this way too. I'm always thinking about work. When I'm out to dinner, I'm passively thinking about work. Donna and I are full-time together in two different businesses, or in whatever way. And so like it is fun to talk about business because we don't hate our businesses. So it's not, rude if we're out on a date night or something to be talking about, what's going on with sales, what's going on with staffing, whatever it might be. But what I would say is when I'm down in my wood shop or walking through the dunes with my dogs, or I'm, driving to the auto shop to repair this truck that I on a farce picked up, all that stuff that I'm doing, I'm thinking about the gym. I'm thinking about my clients. I'm thinking about how we can come out with new pipelines. I'm thinking about how, a presentation or some new thing that we're doing, so that by the time that I get to sit behind the computer, it's like I'm opening the floodgates of a dam. So I would never sit behind a computer and just go like, what do you think, Joe? What do you think we should do? Like, no, fuck that. Like, you and I will talk about, like, for this call, you want to talk about what we're going to talk about. And now I'm thinking about it all day while I'm running my errands, while I'm doing my stuff, presumably with the kids soon. Like, so that by the time it's time to do it, I have nothing but thoughts on it, and I could talk about it for, we're at almost an hour, right? And I think that that's a big part of it too, is like, look, man, everything. I'm not lazy. You're not a lazy person. This call is not to dissuade you from being passionate about your business. This call is to make you understand that your business can actually thrive. Like, I don't think FitBiz grows faster if you and I are in the same room, coming to the office every day, working 8 hours next to each other all day. I really don't think we do I don't think this business is better. I don't think we necessarily even make more money, maybe a little, but I definitely don't think we would be happier with the trajectory of the business. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And I'm very similar to you where and you hear me talk about this in the masterminds is I spend a lot of time visualizing, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I visualize a lot of different scenarios and what they look like. And so what I've learned since having kids is to be disciplined, to not just immediately take action on them, because I used to like have this idea and it immediately open up my computer, start jotting it all down. Like I couldn't help myself,
Yeah.
even if it's 8 o'clock at night and my wife's trying to like get me to watch a movie with her. Like to me, like the restraint required discipline.
Yeah.
And because of that, I started to enjoy the things outside of work more. And so, yes, I'm always thinking about different, sorry, I'm always thinking about different things like you are. And to me, it's kind of like visualizing and going through it, but trying to be disciplined enough to not immediately take action on them, because I think that that's how like you can get you can it's a slippery slope. At least it is for me, because I have like an addictive personality to where all of a sudden like I don't have boundaries anymore, and I'm literally like behind my computer and my kid's like, Dad, look at this, and I'm like, go play, I just don't want to be that guy, right? And so like for me it required a little bit more discipline to not.
Well, even when you do that though, like two things would be: one, that's how I knew I loved Donna. That's how I knew she was the right partner for me. Was I found myself without ever really even thinking about it. Like I didn't think about work after 7 or 8 p.m. when her and I were hanging out early on, and that was one of the best things. Again, but the other point I would make is we've also had the experience of seeing like, hey, if I just drop what I'm doing right now and post this thing, I'm going to then iterate it 2 more times over the next 48 hours. And it's going to be different at the end anyway. And so I think what both of us kind of do is say, all right, well, let's let that run its course. Like how many times have one of us brought something to the other and like, this is the thing, I just had it, it's a lightning strike. And then the other person goes like, yeah, that's cool, but what about that, and that? And then we'll be like, oh, fuck. All right, okay, this is the thing. And then the other person will be like, yeah, what if we did this? And then that's the thing. You know what I mean? And so I think part of it is like, okay, so it's 8 p.m. I'm playing with the dogs, and Donna and I are having a cocktail on the porch, and I come up with an idea. Well, now I sit with it for maybe 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. And by the time I get to it, I've already poked all the holes in it. I've already drafted it out. Like you get into these motions where you realize like, hey man, I'm excited to eat the cake too, but we just put it in the fucking oven. Let's let it cook. Let's let it cook for a little bit. We'll visualize it. We'll go through these other things. I'm relaxed. I'm out there walking with the dogs. And then I go, nope, you do it, pay per close or whatever, like the thing just comes to you. And that really is a real thing. We could get into like beta waves and all those other things that your brain, like science can show you that as well, that like just by, if you've ever been driving and, you blink and you have a great idea and it's been 20 miles and you didn't even realize it, like that's beta waves. But anyway, so what else? What else, man? Anything else before we kind of bring this in for a close?
Well, I'm just interested to know. So if somebody said to you like, hey, Jason, like one of the main things I want to get from working with you guys is like, I have no time. And the reason I asked this is because I spoke to a couple gym owners that were considering our program. And their main thing is like, I have no time at all. I really am missing out on time. I don't even know if I have time to do this program, right? Like what kind of marching orders would you give them? Now, obviously this isn't a sales thing because everybody watching this video is already in our program. But my point is, if somebody's at the point where they're overwhelmed and they can't even see the light at the end of the tunnel, they can't even see the path to like, they're so blinded by the sheer amount of like work and stress where they're like, no, I have to get up at 5 a.m. and teach all these classes and do this. There's no other way. There's just no other way. Like what would be some marching orders you would give them to at least push them in the right direction?
That's the question of the hour. That's a great question. And I think I have a couple of different ways I would look at it. And I would, truthfully, if I'm being like tactical, I would treat it on a case-by-case basis based on my rapport with that person.
Yeah.
Because the metaphor is you might have to come down from the hill. Yes, you're here. You've been able to hold this homeostasis. You might have to come off that hill a little bit if you even want a shot to climb Everest, right? And that's what I'm interested in doing. So that's the metaphor of it. But like as far as what you actually do, well, what would you say to a client that comes in and says, I'm 100 pounds overweight and I don't have the time to come to the gym? I would say, look, if you had the time to eat that food and be sedentary and watch TV and do whatever it was you were doing, whether it's working or kids or whatever, then I would probably ask questions to where I'm not going to be able to break that belief, but I'd probably ask questions to that person that would reveal that in fact they do have the time if this were a priority. And so to me, I don't think that's a valid answer for anybody. I think if somebody truly is working 120 hours a week in their gym, that they're probably being dishonest with themselves as far as whether or not that's required. Does that make sense? I really don't think, I think it's only required if you're trying to be king of a small hill. If you're trying to say, look, I have 100 personal training clients and I am a solo entrepreneur and I have to be there 100 hours per week standing next to somebody while they do curls. You know, I think you just gotta get that person to, and by the way, if they don't, then that's what they can continue to do. If somebody came to me and said, hey, I'm a mechanic and I love doing oil changes, all I do all day is oil changes, I'd say, well, you don't need my help because you're already doing your fucking life's dream is to do oil changes all day, every day, all the time. But if you are on this call to make a change, it is because what you are doing is not working. And so I'm not interested in how many hours of your day are spent doing the things that's not working. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I think truthfully, I think it would be a case-by-case basis. If I really was having that conversation with somebody, like we said, where this isn't a sales call, it's more like a philosophy of it, is like, well, I can't tell you that. I need you to tell me why you think those things that you're choosing to do other than this are more important. You know, I talk to people all the time who, you know, they use family as that. And I don't hate family. I want you to spend time with your family, which is why we got to make a change. Which is why over the next 30, 45, 60, 90 days, we may have to do some things that may not give us energy, that may not be natural or intuitive in order to, as little as 90 days from now, retire from things we don't want to do. Like, I mean, to me, that's just, it's a false choice. It's something that, you know, it's setting me up to give you an answer that'll allow you to continue to do what's not working. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like a short-term loss for a long-term gain, but in days and weeks, not years, right? Yeah. That's kind of the way I look at it too, is sacrifice, you know, days and weeks if with these short bursts of like, maybe you do have to do something you don't want to do in order to be able to do the thing that is going to fix the problem. I just don't think it's like, well, maybe you got to just sacrifice for the next 10 years so you can retire. Like, to me, that's a long-term loss for a possible upside. And what I mean by possible is like, dude, there's no guarantee you're going to retire at 40 if you waste the next 10 years working your ass off. There's no guarantee, but there is 100% guarantee that you won't get that time back. So the upside is just not high enough and the downside is just way too high to make that kind of gamble.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that separates humans from most other animals, there's actually in-depth studies about this, is our ability to forego immediate satisfaction in order to get much more satisfaction in the future. And if you're unable to see that, hey, this might not be like, hey, there's the satisfaction now of like, I can make $50 from this hour versus, okay, but if I trade for that, then it goes nowhere. But if I spent that hour setting myself up for the future, I could potentially make $5,000 off of that system over the lifetime of its system, like life or whatever.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of times, again, we're kind of circling around a lot of the same concepts, but I think it's maybe valuable. If one way that we look at this is impactful to you, then we've done our job. But, you know, at the end of the day, I really think about your clients. You know what, you weren't too busy to get fat. You're not too busy to lose the fat, right? You weren't too busy to set up. I mean, you set up an LLC, you rented a space, you might have hired some people, you bought equipment, and it's not working. You went to all that trouble, and now you're going to stick with your original thing that hasn't been working for you? That just doesn't make sense for me. Or maybe it's shifted. Maybe it did work in the past, and it doesn't work now. Well, guess what, buddy? That's a sunk cost. It's time to fucking move. We gotta move. Oh man, I'm in a firefight and I've got this great position. Oh, now they've seen me. I gotta move, otherwise I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it worked before, it doesn't work now. Let's keep moving. And that's one of the reasons, incidentally, why we don't center our whole program around one particular play or idea, right?
Exactly.
All right, man. Well, I think we've done it. I think we've turned this Rubik's Cube in all different directions. Any final thoughts, Joey, before we hop for the day?
Just guys, if you have wins, they don't have to be monetary wins. Like, I'd love to see a win of something you did with the time that you bought back, right? That would be for me, and I'm sure for Jason too, that would be it'd make my day, right? It'd be such a cool win to see. Like, hey, I just, took the whole day off and did whatever. And we made 4 sales at the gym and my ops manager and whatever. Like, that would be so awesome. So don't be afraid to post those kinds of wins as well. We're not just looking for who did the biggest contracts and whatever. We are all about having your business work for you. So when you have wins like that, dude, drop them for us.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, in fact, why don't you put them in the comments of this video, or you can share them in the Facebook Messenger thread that we have as well. Otherwise, have a great week. This is something that both Joey and I are really passionate on, and I come out of it with an even better understanding as well. I think it's always good to talk to you, Joey, and to go through these things in depth to a level that maybe we wouldn't do if we weren't doing the training. So this has been even great for me. So, all right, everybody, we'll have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
See you next Thursday, guys.